Yeah, a little bit about myself. My name is Tate. I'm the founder and creator of the DigiByte Blockchain. I have been in this space for almost 7 years now, which some people say makes me a dinosaur. So, I've basically been full-time. I've written code that's now used in dozens of blockchains. I think at one time I calculated it was helping to secure over 100 billion worth of blockchain assets. So I know a thing or two from experience. One of the reasons I agreed to actually come to this event is because this, after 7 years, is the closest I've made it home to actually attending a conference. So that's one of the signals to me that's letting me know that this technology is really coming mainstream. So if you've ever wondered like what the ingredients are to, create a blockchain developer, it starts in this little town called Arco, Idaho. So I hear some laughter out there. For those of you that ever wondered what the most remote part of the lower 48 is, it's this little town called Arco. And in fact, it's so remote that the US government tested the first nuclear reactor on it in 1955. And to this day, there's still about 800 people in the town. So I definitely drank the water as a kid. So I do glow in the dark. And that led me on the blockchain path. So, it's kind of great to be back in this area. If you ever get the chance and you're driving through the west out here, drive through Arco. There's this thing called the Critters of the Moon. It's beautiful. So go check it out. So typically when I do these events, I like to kind of gauge the audience and see, how familiar people actually are with the word blockchain. So prior to today, how many people had heard the word blockchain before? Okay, that's pretty good. I would do this at events in 2014 and like one person would raise their hand because everybody just came for Bitcoin, right? So now, how many people in here feel comfortable explaining what a blockchain is to somebody that's new? Okay, so a few less hands. Now my next question is to see if people really know a blockchain. How many people can describe what a Merkle tree is to somebody? Okay, that's what I thought. So this is the formal definition. If you Google it, and it goes to Investopedia, right? A blockchain is a digitized, decentralized public ledger of all cryptocurrency transactions, blah, 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 right? And that's kind of what most people read when they actually read it for the first time. So I feel like that doesn't really, it's not a very good lead-in. So if you take anything away from today, which I think this has been brought up a few times, is think in terms of centralized versus decentralized, right? Well, the best analogy that I have ever, been able to come up with that really seems to sink home with people is to compare blockchain to systems in organization structures that we find in nature. So one of my favorite ways to explain blockchain to somebody that's new is think of DNA, right? So in your body right now, you have millions of DNA cells spread throughout your body, right? Well, they're identical replicated structures that you can basically recreate your own life from. Well, what happens if that DNA, your entire genetic code, was left just only in your fingertip? It was centralized. It was located in one spot. Well, let's say you had an accident and you lost your finger, you'd be in trouble, right? You couldn't have kids, there'd be a lot of issues. Well, if you look throughout nature, you see forms of decentralization all around us. Thousands of different examples. Nature has figured this out a millennia ago. Like, for instance, you take a mushroom, right? When it releases mushroom spore, millions of identical copies that are able to recreate life, and only a handful of them sometimes survive. But the key word is they do survive. So, you can go, you look at seeds, you look at pollen, you look at trees, and you have these decentralized structures for the continuity and the continuation of life. So, I've found this comparison, really kind of hits home and it helps people to kind of, just open their mind to this technology. So, in one word, today's internet infrastructure is completely centralized. So there's this beautiful website that I would recommend. You don't have to do it now, but you can go later. It's called informationisbeautiful.net. And if you go on there, you can actually see this very cool graphic that basically shows all the data breaches and cybersecurity breaches that have occurred going back to like 2004. And if you like move your cursor over one of them, it'll actually kind of pop up and you can read about it. Now, I'm willing to bet pretty much everybody in this room has had their information and their data breached in at least 10 or more of these security incidents. So besides centralization and decentralization, if you take anything else from today, realize that blockchain technology can fix 95% of the internet cybersecurity vulnerabilities that we see today. So, everybody's focused on currency, everyone's focused on trading, but the long-term benefits that are going to really be, experienced from this technology, a lot of it you probably won't realize you're using a blockchain, but it's going to help secure the internet, for the next generation of products and applications in a much better way. So, now, what are some examples of how this can actually work? How does a blockchain actually work? Well, I can't think of a better example to give you and explain than the DigiByte blockchain. So I am a little biased, as I did create it. However, we have pioneered a lot of solutions that, as I mentioned before, are now being used in dozens of other blockchains. So it's been battle hardened and it's been tested, and it's been in the wild there for almost 5 years now. So the DigiByte blockchain started with the headline from USA Today: target data stolen from up to 110 million customers. So that little line, that little hash, was what we call the Genesis block, and is actually what we created the DigiByte blockchain with back in 2014. And that's because we could see that this technology is going to be used to fix a lot of these security issues. So that's the actual the code that actually does that. To date, DigiByte is currently the longest major blockchain in the world. It's currently the fastest, and I would argue it's the most decentralized. Since last year, we've had almost, I think at this point, 240,000 nodes installed. For those of you that don't know what a node is, it's basically a server or computer that's running an identical version of the blockchain. So that's where I say that, like DNA, it's like a copy of a DNA cell, right? So we've done a series of hard forks, soft forks, and innovations that have helped make DigiByte faster, more secure, and more stable. So, and a lot of this stuff that we have pioneered, I guess I'll talk to certain points a little bit later, but it's found its way in everything from Zcash to Bcash to Ethereum and dozens of other chains. So, so let's see, we kind of covered that. So what makes DigiByte more secure than a lot of the other blockchains? Well, first of all, going back to like what we were talking about before, this whole centralization versus decentralization thing, you really have to be wary when you go to CoinMarketCap and you look at the top 100. And you got to realize that a lot of the coins that are on there aren't even real functioning blockchains. Some of the ones that are on there are literally ran on maybe a dozen servers. So I feel one of the things and my concerns as somebody that's been in the industry for almost 7 years is this term of blockchain has been interchanged with decentralized, and that's not always the case. So, if you take one other thing away, make sure to take note of that. Actually do research on projects you're interested in and see how decentralized they really are, because a lot of these big ones, they literally are running on a 2 dozen servers controlled by a handful of people, a guy and his friends. So we have, one of the unique things about DigiByte is we have 5 independent mining algorithms instead of just one, like Litecoin and Bitcoin. You could actually take all the Litecoin mining power in the world and actually throw it at DigiByte, and you'll actually only get 20% of the mining reward. You could take all the Bitcoin mining power in the world that's centralized with Bitmain, and you can only get 20% of the DigiByte blocks out there. And if you want an entertaining conversation, I'm currently having a feud with Charlie Lee as we speak on Twitter about this. So let's see, what makes us forward thinking? Well, we were kind of the first ones that started going out there and being like, hey, this technology is beautiful for cybersecurity. Everybody else is focused on payments. They're focused on all this other stuff. Sure, you can use DigiBytes to send transactions in, just a matter of seconds to anyone in the world. It's much faster to send payments than Bitcoin or Litecoin. And we do it all the time. It's a great use case, but it's not our primary focus. when you start talking about cybersecurity, I like to tell people that the future of technology is going to be a combination of three things. You're going to have cybersecurity with blockchain. And how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to use, blockchain is going to be the rails for artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is going to analyze data that's coming from IoT devices, sensors. So a lot of this stuff that's going to emerge over the next 5 to 10 years is going to be automated. It's going to impact your life. You're just really not going to know that you're actually using it. So that's kind of where we're thinking, and that's where our vision is, moving into the year 2035. So what makes us faster? As I mentioned before, we have 15-second block timing. One of the things a lot of people don't know, how many people know what a block is? I know I kind of get hurt. So it looks like a few people may be a little confused. So a block is like an Excel spreadsheet. Like if you take everybody in this room and you basically wrote down, all the transactions that they, spent in the last day or so in Park City, and you grouped them all into one, Excel spreadsheet. Well, it's time-based. So, for instance, with Bitcoin, you have 10-minute blocks. With Litecoin, it's 2.5 minutes. With DigiByte, we've got it down to 15 seconds. And that was actually based on research done at Microsoft when they analyzed the Bitcoin network from 2012 through like 2015 and seeing how long it took to propagate blocks across the entire internet worldwide. And basically, like 95% of all blocks, because of the latency and the internet itself, take about 13 seconds. We were actually the first major blockchain to implement SegWit last year. Unlike, Ethereum, people like to talk about smart contracts, and that's the big game changer, and that's why, drew people to Ethereum. A lot of people don't realize a lot of that same functionality was possible with Bitcoin as early as like 2012 and 2013. The problem was the Bitcoin blockchain filled up super fast. So a lot of that really cool, innovative stuff that was developed in 2013, 2014 was ignored. As more people came in, it was kind of pushed to the side. So we have kind of picking up some of that and continued some of that development. And we have what I call a more rigid, more secure structure without as many vulnerabilities that you see in a lot of the Ethereum smart contracts that go out there. But you can still build a whole bunch of innovative products on top of the DigiByte blockchain. I want to take a minute here, since I know I'm supposed to be a keynote, and I know that a lot of people are probably fairly new to the industry. We came up with this last fall because, as I mentioned, when you go to coinmarketcap.com and you look at all these projects, you really, there's so much misinformation. And I've publicly tweeted at CoinMarketCap, hey, you're misleading a lot of people. You're trying to group, steak and apples and oranges, all in the same category and call them fruit when it's really not fruit. You've got, protein and you've got carbohydrates and stuff. So, if you look at this chart, how I describe it to people is if you think of like a tree, and the trunk is like the most solid part. It's the oldest part of the tree. It's kind of where the technology started from. So, it started with Bitcoin. Then you have Litecoin. And DigiByte kind of fits in there as well, too. It's a pure, true, decentralized UTXO system. And there's really only a handful of those left. If you look at the CoinMarketCap top 100, there's probably only 5 of us that were around 4 years ago at this point. Now, from there, you start getting these branches. And, one of the things I like to tell people is I'm not a maximalist. Like, I think there should be multiple blockchains. However, sometimes you get some of these offshoots, and there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of scams, and there's a lot of untested, unproven technology. There's a lot of pie-in-the-sky ideas, and there's just not as much proven stuff. So, once again, I would encourage everybody to really do their own research and really kind of dive into these projects. But we kind of like to categorize, and by the way, one of the things I've been advocating for is we really need an index, and what I like to call a decentralization index of how decentralized the blockchain project actually is and how it actually functions. There's a major need for that in the industry right now. But, so this kind of core tree trunk is what we call, proof of work chains, right? Which to date, I still stand by. Proof of work is the most secure. It's the only time-tested way to actually secure a blockchain. I know like a lot of people like to rebuttal with, oh, Ethereum's going to go with Casper, proof of stake. Well, not really, because for every one proof of stake block, there's still 99 proof of work blocks. So it's definitely not a true proof of stake system. So now for those that may be wondering what I mean by proof of stake, so proof of work is typically what is defined as mining. So that's where you have miners. In exchange for that mining power, it's kind of like the lottery. You get the new coins that come into circulation as they're minted. Proof of stake's a little different in that you don't have to have any mining hardware. You simply have to have your wallet open, and it's kind of like getting dividends. You just what they call stake. However, there are some fairly significant security vulnerabilities with that. So. And that's why today, after 3.5 years or however long they've been saying they're going to go fully proof of stake, they haven't actually switched it. I'm talking about Ethereum there. There's hybrids, which I think is kind of cool, like a project like Decreed, where they actually do both proof of work and proof of stake simultaneously. It's something we've talked about with DigiByte. You have the virtual machine model, like Ethereum. And then you have these completely centrally issued projects, like Ripple, like some of the stuff you see on top of BitShares, and some of these other stuff. And a lot of people that come into the blockchain space, they get confused. They're like, oh, I buy Ripple. And it's like, well, you realize it's 100% controlled by a single company, an entity. So it's one of those things. Like, I think there are use cases. Like I said before, there are plenty of different variations and applications for different types of blockchains. But people just really need to know that a lot of the projects that you come in and look at are really not actually decentralized. And a lot of them aren't even real blockchains at this point in time. So, definitely do your research. So here's just a quick comparison in what DigiByte can handle. Currently, we can handle about 560 transactions per second compared to Bitcoin's 3 to 7. We have tested this live on the network. We have proven it will work. Like I said, 15-second block times. We have what's known as a real-time difficulty adjustment, which I don't want to get too technical because I don't want to bore everybody. I know it's right after lunch. But long story short, put it this way, when Bcash forked from Bitcoin, they literally forked from our repo to fix their problem. So, yeah. Anyways, going back to the 5 mining algorithms, real-time, one of the things that actually makes this a little more secure is we have 5 independent mining algorithms: SHA-256, Grossel, Skeen, Script, and Quibbit. Now, people, that probably sounds like gibberish, but that actually comes from, there's this body in the U.S. government called NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They're the ones that define basically how top secret information should be handled. They're the ones that actually, put out the competition to replace the SHA-2 family with SHA-3. And a lot of these algorithms actually came out of that competition. So that's kind of how we ended up with that. So just like Bitcoin, but a little different, we will have 21 billion digibytes that are minted in 21 years. So this started in 2014 with one of the most fair launches ever in the history of cryptocurrencies. And it'll continue. The last digibyte will be minted in year 2035. At that point, the network will be supported by mining fees. But every month, there's about 1% less that comes into circulation. So that's how the distribution works. Originally, we wanted to have a 1 to 1,000 ratio, which people said that was crazy 4 years ago, but now it makes a lot of sense, because who wants to go walk in and pay for their morning coffee with 0.00004 Bitcoin, right? Versus, 5, 10 digibytes. So that was kind of the original idea. And obviously to have more units as more people come involved. So for those that are new to blockchain, the analogy I'm about to give can actually be applied to Bitcoin. It could be applied to Litecoin. It could be applied to Ethereum. But I like to describe a blockchain as like an Oreo cake with 3 layers. Your very bottom layer is a protocol and communications layer. So effectively, Bitcoin and DigiByte are very, very decentralized communication systems at their most base level. And I'm excited when people start realizing this and start doing some really innovative like messaging apps and emails and stuff like that, but nobody's really kind of picking up on this yet. But it's definitely possible with these systems that are out there now. Because once you have the network in place, you can do a lot of cool stuff. Now, what incentivizes people to run these nodes and get this network going? Well, that's where that middle layer, that asset layer, right? That's where the DigiBytes, that's where the trading, that's where the payments, that's where the money comes in. That's why people are using this to begin with, right? And once you have those two things in place, then you can start building some really cool applications on top, right? And so we are very much, in the infancy of what is possible with this technology. Like, so I'm in the process of writing a book called Blockchain 2035, and how blockchain technology will impact our lives by that year. And it's based on a lot of the conversations I've had over the last 7 years. I've pretty much met with every major financial institution, Fortune 500 company, at some point or another, right? And the ability to transform everything from, money, documents, messaging, videos, music, photos, IoT data, we're literally in the infancy. So that's why it's such an exciting time. That's why I'm here, because I want to help do my part to help inform people, because I feel like the biggest hurdle that's keeping us to this next wave and this very pivotal point in humanity is information and education. Because, I don't know what the gentleman's name was earlier, but he basically said it's like taking all the confusion of money and all the confusion of technology and putting it in one. It's so true. With the DigiByte blockchain, we have the ability to embed. I think there was a question earlier about embedding data in a blockchain. I really kind of hate that analogy, because you're really not embedding data. You're kind of anchoring it, representing it in a cryptographic way, which is actually how the entire blockchain thing itself works. Like, if you remember at the beginning of this presentation, I showed you that hash, that news headline. Well, that little piece of information is all you need to recreate the entire history of the blockchain with DigiByte. So, similar to how the Bitcoin headline started the Bitcoin blockchain. So, it's a very fascinating thing. If you have more time, really look into like Merkle structures. If you're building an app or something, and that'll actually help explain how you can actually use this blockchain technology to scale and handle mass amounts of data on top of a blockchain. So these are some technical specifications. We would encourage you, if you want to get involved, learn more. We have an amazing community. When DigiByte originally started, I actually created it because I had gone through the Bitcoin core protocol, and I saw some issues. I was a miner. I saw the centralization of mining. I saw that the block times could be faster. So when we originally launched it, it was kind of like an experiment. We never really intended for it to just take off. It was like, hey, here's some code. What do you guys think? And the next thing I know, within a week, there's like an alligator farm in Florida, a dentist in Turkey, and it's just like, oh, yeah, we're going to use this for payments. It's much faster. So, it's kind of cool. So it's a very organic grassroots community. At this point, I'm sure there's been probably a couple million people, because there's been several occasions we've been the most traded by trading volume in the alt scene. But yeah, you can follow us on DigiByte Coin. If you go to digibyte.io. And then I also like to tell people, it's like, don't take my word for this. Just go try it yourself. Go download a wallet, send a transaction, compare it to your previous crypto experiences, and just, see for yourself. It's completely decentralized. There is no company. There was no ICO. There was none of that. It used to be in 2013, 2014, you actually had to make a blockchain before anybody would give any attention to you, but that's since changed. The majority of our community, we have tens of thousands of people that are active in several channels. I can't even keep up with the channels. I will literally wake up, and there will be 30 or 40,000 new messages. So it can be pretty overwhelming. So I know I was a little quick on this, but I kind of wanted to just break it up, and I kind of do better with on-the-spot questions. And I just wanted to kind of open myself up. I have developed everything from the core protocol to wallets to exchanges to services on top of DigiByte and other blockchains. So I kind of have I've been on the business side. I've dealt with regulators. I've kind of across the spectrum. So I would love to kind of open it up to questions. Here, this gentleman over here. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple of things. So part of the reason that we're able to get that faster or the higher transactions per second is block timing, right? So currently we've got 1 megabyte blocks, similar to Bitcoin, but we have it every 15 seconds versus every 10 minutes, right? So one of the things we've done is we've introduced code in the core protocol so every 2 years, the block size will double. So, 2 years from now, it'll go to 2 megabytes, and all of a sudden we're at 1,000, or 12, or whatever it is, whatever the math is. I can't do it right now. And then 2 years from there, it doubles again. And so by the year 2035, we're assuming, because really the bottleneck with that is actually the infrastructure and the actual hardware behind the internet today. So we're assuming that by the year 2035, we should be able to handle 280,000 transactions per second. So, yeah. Another question? Yeah. Okay, so currently, last time I checked, it was about 7 gigabytes. So quite a bit smaller than, so, a lot of people don't realize the issue with like running a Bitcoin node, it's a massive, what is it, like 200 gigabytes, 150 gigabytes now or something? A lot of that spam, there was people intentionally trying to, there have been a lot of changes implemented in the protocol, without getting into too much technical detail in the last 12 months or so, that prevent a lot of those bloat issues that we were seeing back in 2013, 2012. And luckily, there's that old adage of, not being the first, but being one of the first to back and, you can sit back and analyze the flaws in the people that came before you. That's one of the issues and things we've been able to do with DigiByte to help make sure we don't have people that launch bloat attacks or spam attacks on the network. So
we have time for one more question, Jared, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and DigiByte is pretty much doubled in the last couple of weeks. What would you say are the main events that created that?
So I mean, first off, one of the things I've always said for 5 years is I never talk price because everybody wants to know. However, in this particular situation, I mean, it's like I stated earlier. If you go and you look at the coin market cap, top 100, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, like every 6 months, you're only going to see a handful of projects that have stayed around for that long. I mean, what is it? I saw the headline, it comes out, 95% of projects have failed. And ICOs even more. So what's happening, I think, is a lot of the riffraff is being, kind of purged, and people are seeing these projects that have been established. They've got proven working use cases, and there's a lot of good stuff that's happened. So, I mean, specifically, yeah, we had some stuff happen. We released a new mobile wallet, which is actually probably the best mobile full SPV wallet in the crypto space today. So if you have an Android phone, you can go download it, check it out. Super fast. One of the things with being the longest blockchain in the world, we're over 6 million blocks, almost 7 million now. It's like looking at Bitcoin in the year like 2100 in terms of how you actually sync all the headers, how you sync all the different components. So we've actually had to face and overcome problems that Bitcoin won't even face for a long time. So, that's kind of also put us in a very unique position. So, but yeah, thanks for the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, how about a round of applause for the founder and creator of DigiByte, Jared Tate. Thank you so much.